By the end of this video, you'll know everything you need to get started with Star Trek Infinite. Think of this video like somebody explaining the rules to a new board game.
On Beta Antares 4, they play a real game. It's a man's game.
Afterwards, check out my companion video so you can see how it all comes together. As an entry into the 4X grand strategy genre, you not only live in a society, you are the society. When you load into a new game, you'll be presented with an overhead view of the galaxy, and we'll just ignore for a moment that an overhead view doesn't make any sense in space. The borders of your civilization create a perimeter around your territory, where you'll find your home planet, a few starter planets, and a couple of ships. In Stellaris, the game Star Trek Infinite is based on, you can see the lines between the stars, but here they made those lines invisible and added a warp range system that restricts which solar systems you can visit based on how close they are to your star bases. The basic objective is to take control of the galaxy, either through the carrot or the stick. The carrot being diplomacy, and the stick, of course, being the wrong end of a photon torpedo. Eventually, you'll control enough stuff to win, or eventually the time will run out and you can rack up a high score. Or you could lose horribly. These are all possibilities. The 4X's in the 4X genre stand for explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. But those are the things your civilization are doing. As a player, I prefer to think of it as 5 categories of things you need to manage: your economy, your military, your infrastructure, research and development, and foreign affairs. We'll go over each in turn, talking about how Star Trek Infinite implements these categories and what you need to know about each of them. Starting with the economy. Just about everything has some kind of cost associated with it, including time. There are a few major consumables to worry about, a few abstract resources, and a few exotic resources that are only relevant later in the game. The 2 most important resources are minerals and energy credits. Minerals are used to build just about everything except for ships, and they can also be converted into other resources like research and alloys, which are themselves used to build the ships. Without minerals, your ability to expand or build anything is pretty much dead in the water. Energy credits are used to purchase a few things, but are mainly paid as a recurring cost for the things you already own. They're also the currency used for the exchange of other resources on the galactic market. Deuterium is another important resource because you need it for recurring maintenance of your ships. Think of it like gasoline for starships. Food is used to feed your hungry masses, and it's also needed for building colony ships to, seek out new worlds and put your own civilizations there, as long as no one else was there first, of course. Beyond those consumable resources, you also have abstract resources, like research points that further your research projects, Unity, which is used to unlock perks on the mission tree and to pay for a few odds and ends here and there, and influence, which is basically an artificial resource created just to slow down your expansion. Every planet you colonize, take from another faction during a war, or assimilate through diplomacy is going to have some kind of influence cost. This prevents a slightly more powerful civilization than the others from snowballing the whole map and winning off of one early advantage. Another abstract resource is time. The game always starts paused. The upper right hand corner of the screen has some controls for pausing and unpausing, as well as adjusting the speed. There isn't any way to gain more time, but you will occasionally run across bonuses that reduce the number of months things take to complete. Up next, let's talk about the military. You start the game with 1 fleet. Each fleet you build is limited in size based on your fleet capacity. Larger ships will contribute more towards this cap than smaller ones. You start with a cap of 20, but you can go well over 100 after you've accumulated a bunch of upgrades. Ships are built from star bases that have a shipyard module attached. If you have more ships than will fit into 1 fleet, or you're building ships from more than 1 star base, then you're going to start accumulating multiple fleets. 2 or more smaller fleets, whose combined size is still within your fleet capacity, can be merged together by selecting them with the shift key and hitting the merge button. You can assign an admiral to a fleet who can boost their performance. When the game begins, you'll only have access to build 1 kind of combat ship, a constructor, which is used to build star bases, a science ship which can survey other stars and investigate anomalies, and colony ships which can start colonies on habitable worlds. As the game goes on, you'll unlock bigger and better military ships. When two opposing fleets are in the same solar system, they'll fight. In order to secure a planet, you will need to win both a ground war and a space war, so you'll need transport ships with armies on them who can land and attack on the ground. What's the process for actually capturing a planet? Here's the checklist. First, you need to spend influence in order to claim that planet. This is something you have to do before you go to war. You can only claim 3 new planets at a time, but you can continue to claim old planets that you weren't able to capture before, or which the enemy has retaken from you. Next, you'll need to be at war with the faction whose planets you put a claim on. Then, you'll have to take out the opposing military fleet and star bases in those systems. You'll also have to land a ground army and win a battle on the ground. And lastly, you'll need the war to resolve in such a way that you get to keep any claimed planets that you've actually conquered. It sounds more complicated than it is, but trust me, it's not that bad. Okay, so we've talked about resources and we've talked about militaries and invading planets. But how do you get all of that stuff? That's where your infrastructure comes in. You start the game with a few colonies already, each of which are in a solar system with a special kind of starbase called an outpost. Any solar system with an outpost can be colonized as long as there's a suitable planet, and all solar systems can have stations built in them which allow you to harvest minerals, deuterium, research points, and other resources they might have available. Starbases can also be part of your trade routes, which have collection ranges. It's a relatively simple mechanic. The game will try to stitch them together into a graph that goes back to your capital planet. The collected trade value by default is converted into energy credits, which is probably best to stick with in the early days. But you can adjust this to provide other resources instead. We'll come back to that later when we talk about policies and edicts. The other major source of resources comes from your planets. This is the most complicated thing to manage. Planets house your populations. Depending on the type and quality of the planet, it will be more or less habitable for them, and they will have different bonuses and penalties. The important thing you need to focus on are the districts. These districts have slots that can be built up, after which they will provide jobs for your people. And it's the jobs themselves that produce the actual resources and benefits. Agriculture districts provide farmer jobs which produce food. Mining districts provide miner jobs that produce minerals. Energy districts provide technician jobs which produce energy credits. Industrial districts provide 2 different jobs that provide a whole bunch of things, but the main one is the metallurgist that converts minerals into alloys that are needed for building ships. Each faction has a unique district that complements their playstyle. Finally, there's the city districts that are the most diverse and interesting. They produce clerk jobs that can create some trade value, but their main use comes from unlocking more building slots. There are a large number of different buildings you can build, and they can produce just about anything. Some overlap with what districts can do in terms of offering jobs, and some offer unique benefits. You can use them to increase your research, gain administration points, and some of them are needed to complete your mission tree objectives. A handful are available to build at the start of the game, but many will need to be unlocked via research. You can set up some jobs as priorities over others, affecting the output of your planet somewhat. Let's talk about those people working the jobs. You can have citizens from different species, and you'll acquire more as you assimilate other powers and planets into your civilization. The population of your people grows over time, and you can unlock bonuses that improve their growth rate. Different species have different traits that will affect all sorts of things, including how demanding they are, how good they are at fighting ground wars or conducting research, and so on. Stability, as the name implies, is a measure of how balanced your planets are. Having more people than jobs causes unemployment, for example, or they may not have sufficient amenities, or there could be a high crime rate. Having low stability comes with a slew of penalties and reduced production, and it can even lead to people defecting to the enemy. It's not enough to simply employ them, they also need to be happy as well. Planets can have designations which offer a bonus to one type of output in exchange for reductions in another. Having one active also allows you to turn on planet automation after which the game will do its best to develop the planet for you according to that designation. This is okay if you really can't be bothered, but you're going to get much better results if you manage the planets yourself. Next, let's move on to research and development. This exceedingly broad category covers all the things that slowly make your civilization more powerful that don't involve acquiring things or building stuff. Permanent upgrades mostly come from your mission tree, traditions, and technology projects. The mission tree is story-driven and gives you small tasks to complete in order to unlock rewards and progress further on the tree. The Federation one, for example, allows you to build the USS Enterprise D, fully equipped with Captain Picard and the whole crew from Star Trek The Next Generation. There are branching paths, and it's best to plan out the path you plan to take so you don't accidentally make it hard or impossible to finish. Traditions are unlocked slowly over time as you accumulate unity. There are 3 pairs of tradition trees. You can choose either the one on the left or the one on the right, but not both. Each faction also has a 4th tradition tree that's custom made just for them. Unlocking all 5 perks in a given tree will unlock an Ascension perk, which are quite powerful. I'll go over all the traditions and perks in a separate video. At any given time, you can have 3 research projects, assuming you have scientists to staff them. For each area of research, you'll be given 3 options to choose from. Each one has a time to completion and a category. There's no way to get different choices, so if you aren't happy with what it gives you, you might want to pick the fastest one to complete just to get it out of the way so you can queue up some more choices. If the scientist assigned to that area of research has a trait that matches the research category, then it will appear in green, and they'll be able to complete it faster than normal. A lot of things are locked behind research projects, including mission tree objectives. Some buildings you can put on your planet will increase your research speed, and I highly recommend that you do so. You can choose from some perks that are optional. In the Policies and Edicts tab, you change how your trade value is converted into currency. The default is entirely to energy credits, but you can have it pay out in minerals, alloy, food, or a combination. Edicts are a bit like planet designations that affect your entire civilization, but you're limited on how many you can have at once, and they often come with downsides as well as the upsides. You're also locked into edicts for 10 years after you choose them, so be sure to pick wisely. Planets can activate decisions, which have a variety of costs and come with benefits and sometimes penalties. Some are permanent and some are temporary. These can be easy to forget to do, but they can get you out of a tight pinch when stability is low, or they might allow you to add an extra district. Finally, let's wrap things up with foreign affairs, starting with espionage. If you have spy ships, you can put them into orbit around other factions' solar systems, then right-click on a planet or a star base to get a list of espionage missions, or set them to automatically perform counter-espionage against other civilizations' spies trying to sabotage you. You can do all sorts of things with these spy missions, including spreading propaganda, disabling their star bases, and stealing their technology. Diplomacy is not as complicated as it seems. At a basic level, each civilization has an opinion of you, which dictates what kind of interactions you can have with them. You can manipulate this opinion up or down. Assigning envoys will improve your relations. Going to war with them will obviously hurt it. As their tolerance of you increases, you can escalate various mutually beneficial agreements and pacts, leading to assimilating them into your civilization and taking complete control over them. In the meantime, you can make trade deals and research deals to improve your production, allow your people to immigrate freely across borders, assure their defense, mutually or not, and so on. If you're playing as the Federation, then diplomacy is your only real tool for acquiring minor civilizations into your own. You'll need to protect them from the more war-hungry civilizations on the map until they can be convinced to assimilate. You can also offer to swap resources, technology, and assets if you want as well. Feel free to leave any questions below in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.